New Jersey, my home state. #1 in population density, diners, and consumption of pork roll, egg, and cheese. If you know, you know. But another thing that New Jersey usually ranks #1 at is their K-12 education system. They usually rank pretty darn high in the entire country. However, due to one teeny tiny mistake that could have taken about 5 minutes to fix, the state missed out on a grant of $400 million to their education system. And given the fact that there's about 110,000 teachers in New Jersey, that could have meant a bonus of around $4,000 per teacher. Not that the state actually would have spent the money that way, but still. Some blame the teachers union, while others blame the bureaucrats in Washington. But what exactly happened to cause New Jersey to lose such a massive amount of funding? Enter Race to the Top. The year is 2009. The Obama administration is looking for a way to streamline the US education system. The US is kind of broken in a way. We have 50 different states, and each one of these states wants to do their education system a little bit differently than the other ones. Now, this has a benefit in that each state can have a better education than the others, but also has a huge negative in that some states don't really put that much effort into their education, and so depending on where you go to, well, your education could vary wildly. Each state has its own education system, its own assessment criteria, as well as its own curricula. And no state exemplifies this example no better than Texas. Students who end up going to school in Texas have to take 2 full years of Texas history. That's right, a state with less than 200 years of history means you have to spend 2 years of it in your 3rd grade and 7th grade year learning all about it. Don't forget that Alamo. Not only do you have to take 2 years of Texan history, but each and every day you have to make a pledge of allegiance to the United States flag, standard in the US, as well as to the specific state of Texas. I have the pledge right here. We have honor the Texas flag. I pledge allegiance to thee. Texas, one state under God, one and indivisibly. It's actually indivisible, but I felt like it should rhyme. Either way, what a load of wank. Honor this fabric. So like I said, every state has different ways of doing things, and that's not necessarily a good thing. So federally, the United States Department of Education had a huge problem on their hands. How can they possibly unify all of the states' distinct little bits, have them retain their states' rights and be able to have their own education system, while also improving the ones that are not doing the best? You could say, is it money, Evan? Is money the answer to this problem? Well, kind of, but that's not quite American enough, okay? In typical American fashion, we did use money, but in a competition. Why not make it a fun little competition? Race to the top. It even sounds like a reality TV show. Amazing. Or even maybe a Mr. Beast video. 50 states enter. Last one to get a really good education system gets $400 million. Jimmy, give me a call. I've got a lot of good videos like this, please. Thank you very much. Anyway, with that, Race to the Top was born. So the federal government set aside over $4 billion to whip the states into shape. Nothing inspires change quite like a little bit of dough. And so they made their competition into a points-based system. And as much as the idea of a points-based system reignites my trauma of having to get a visa to stay in the UK forever, it actually worked out quite well for this program. Out of all the 50 states, as well as the District of Columbia, the top 10 states with the most points win $400 million each. Seems quite easy for New Jersey, who's always usually at the top, but what are we being graded on? What are these points actually for? You see, the US Department of Education didn't just have problems with the variance of different courses and the quality of education you get. Some states were really lagging behind with some really basic things, and so they gave a lot of extra points depending on what the states were going to put some time and money into.
Chef's hats on. Did I hear anyone talk about food?
No.
Oh. Well, time and money, it's time to tell you about today's video sponsor.
Oh, look what just arrived. It's my HelloFresh box. Some weeks deciding what to cook is more difficult than others. This week, I went through HelloFresh's extensive catalog and chose 3 different recipes I wanted to try out. Then, a few days later, HelloFresh sent me all the fresh ingredients I needed as well as the convenient little menu cards. The recipes were really easy to follow, and I can't overstate just how nice it is not to have to think about what you're gonna cook for dinner this week, especially with recipes as nice as the Thai green style chicken curry, which took all of 30 minutes to make. Cooking a fresh meal from scratch always is more satisfying to me than ordering a takeaway. I'm always getting better at cooking, and a lot of times it's a lot healthier too. The meal was super tasty, and luckily I had leftovers, so I had food for lunch the next day too. You can go for recipes to prove your Britishness to friends, like bangers and mash, or try your hand at beef and beanie quesadillas. There's always a lot of options to choose from, and if you sign up at my link below, or just simply scan the QR code right here on the right side of the video, you can get 60% off your first box and 25% off the next 8 boxes. Wow, that is quite a deal.
Thanks again, HelloFresh, and let's go back to find out what the states were actually graded on.
There were quite a few things that you got points for, but I'm going to read out the 5 that I found the most important and the most interesting. So the first one here we got was the effectiveness and support of teachers and principals and even distribution of good teachers. Essentially what that means is they don't want states to just have really good schools and really bad schools. They want to have that spread out a bit more. Don't just have it so that the wealthy districts have really smart students that kind of skew the grades. We want a more even distribution. Spread those good teachers out. actually try and have it so that your state is a bit fairer than just the rich get better grades and the rich get a better education. So you take the data from before the competition, from after the competition, and see how much you improved as a state, and then you get more points depending on your improvement. The second big thing the US Department of Education was looking for was statewide support for a more common standard for high quality testing. Basically, more multiple choice tests, or at least tests that you can compare among states. Think about it this way. If you were a student going to school in, let's just say, Mississippi, and you were deemed as having really good reading ability by your teacher, but your parents end up moving somewhere like North Dakota, and then it turns out, according to North Dakota, your student is actually now really insufficient. They can't read that well at all compared to everyone else. That's not good. That means that the education system is so different that you could be marked as having good grades or marked as being good at reading when you can't read at all. And so this was a huge focus of Race to the Top. Make sure we kind of even the playing field a bit. At least we can test them similarly among the states to kind of find out who the weakest links are and then hopefully give them a bit more funding. So that is such a large variance in what is acceptable that the US really wanted to make sure, hey, at least let's make sure Americans know how to read. As a side note, are Scantrons still a thing these days? If anyone went to school in the last 10 years in America, still using Scantrons? I assume we've progressed past Scantrons, but that was a huge part of my childhood. Now, the third thing the US Department of Education was looking for, which is a bit contentious depending on who you talk to, is making sure the states place a higher emphasis on STEM courses in their curricula. Now, I'm a STEM baby myself. I studied math. STEM, of course, if you don't know, is science, technology, engineering, and math. I like math. I got my master's degrees. Get you jobs. What's not to like? Personally, this is just an opinion. As much as I love math, I feel like the more emphasis we put on it, the more as a culture we're saying the other ones aren't as valuable. So anything about literature, writing, arts, not valuable. Only math, which I think is just not the best idea as a culture. That's my opinion aside. Either way, you get points if you put more emphasis on STEM for your curriculum. Now, I really don't want to bore you with all the criteria to get different points, but there are two more of interest that I thought you'd find interesting as well. One, turn around your worst performing schools. That's actually good. So the state is focusing on the worst schools they have to bring them up. That's a great idea. And finally, a big focus on Race to the Top was to try and get the states that were kind of digging their heels in on implementing a longitudinal data system to do just that. Now, I'm going to explain this in a very layman's way. You know when you were in school and people used to say, hey, you make any mistakes, it's gonna go on your permanent record. None of that really existed. You move schools, nothing, doesn't matter. However, a longitudinal data system is actually a way of seeing each student's grades in time. So that way you can actually see, hey, we improved the way that the teachers were teaching during this year. Can we see an improvement in grades? Basically, it's more data about the students so that you can see how you're performing as a school. It's a great thing to implement, and surprisingly, despite the fact that we are well into the tech age, was not implemented by many states before Race to the Top. But Evan, I want to hear more about that home state thing. What's the YouTube title? What's going on? How did they make this mistake? Well, New Jersey, they're resting on their laurels. They're comfortable. New Jersey knows they've got this one in the bag. They're always pretty good. Hey, they can turn around some of their worst schools and make them even better. Hey, first place, second place, should be a walk in the park. You see, the state of New Jersey already consistently spends a good percentage of their budget on the education system, so it would be a lot easier for them to meet their criteria because they've already got a lot of the money in place. All the state really had to do was dot their I's, cross their T's, and check on some underperforming schools, submit the paperwork, and the money is in the bag. But at the last second, there was quite a problem. You see, after compiling the near 1,000-page document that would have ensured that the US Department of Education would have given $400 million to New Jersey, well, someone at the top had some disagreements. That being Governor Chris Christie. You see, one of the main things that was absolutely vital to winning this competition was ensuring that your teachers were all on board. If you as a state could say, hey, we want to improve here and here and here, but if your teachers aren't going to agree with you, well, then you're dead in the water. So Chris Christie and the NJEA, or New Jersey's Education Association, which is the largest teachers union in the state, had lots and lots of conversations and debates. And finally, after a huge amount of compromise, an agreement was set. They had the forms, everything was agreed upon, everything was looking really good. But the thing is, Chris Christie doesn't like compromise. That makes him feel like he doesn't win. Why would he allow these teachers unions to get a win out over him, over having more tenure? Ugh, that made him sick. Ironically, considering the fact that this whole thing was supposed to be showing support for the teachers. So even though the form in its current state had the full backing of most teachers in New Jersey, including the entirety of the NJEA, well, at the last minute, Chris Christie decided to just do a little changes by removing all the things that they had just recently compromised on at the expense of the teachers union. Tenure? Throw it away. Merit pay? Merit nay. Why allow these teachers to force my hand? I'm Chris Christie. I'll shut down state beaches so there's more room for all of me. And when I say these last minute changes, where last minute, I really mean last minute. You see, the Race to the Top forms needed to be submitted by Memorial Day Monday, and Christie's team decided to do all these changes over the weekend before. And so there was no actual way for them to do all of their nefarious deeds and change all the bits and remove the tenure and all that to make sure that they had these new forms in, while also being able to mail it to Washington, D.C. where it needed to go. And so the incredibly large forms had to be driven and delivered by hand from New Jersey all the way to D.C., which I've done the drive before. It's quite a feat. So at the last minute, arriving on Memorial Day Monday, a sad staffer finally handed the 1,000-page document to Washington, D.C. bureaucrats for them to finally give New Jersey the award they truly deserve. And thankfully, it was submitted on time. With a little catch. You see, during Christie's rewrite of all the teachers' tenure packages in his state, he accidentally submitted the wrong year. They were meant to show data from the 2008-2009 school year, but accidentally sent the 2011 and 2012 year, a mistake that was not apparent in the original documents. And because of this incredibly small mistake, it turns out, well, the data is different now. The students aren't necessarily improved as much as if they had originally used the 2008 data, and so they missed out on a very small 4.8 points out of a total of 500 points. 4.8 points. Little mistake. Little mistake. How much could that hurt them in the end? Oh boy. And so, when the top states were announced on who would win the $400 million budget, New Jersey was shining right at the top of the losers. At 11th place, that 4.8 points put them right below what was necessary to win, with 10th place being a mere 3 points ahead. If they'd submitted the original documents, New Jersey would have had 442.6 points, putting it squarely in 9th place, above North Carolina and bumping Ohio into 11th place. But I guess at the end of the day, if you went to school in Ohio, you can thank the stupidest governor of New Jersey, Chris Christie, for the reason you got a nice, healthy $400 million. Now, obviously, there was a bit of backlash in the state of New Jersey against the governor for making such a stupid mistake. However, Christie refuted these claims, saying this was all the fault of the bureaucrats in Washington. If they had submitted the wrong data, it was actually their fault that New Jersey submitted the wrong data, and if Washington had just given Christie a call, they could have sorted this all out. Until the bureaucrats in Washington decided to hold an hour-and-a-half-long Zoom seminar showing that, no, they did try. The data was just wrong, submitted incorrectly, and there was nothing they could do. The data just wasn't given to them. When reached for a response, Christie replied with, "I'm seriously disappointed. I'm serious." Wow. I guess that makes up for everything, right? $400 million. He says he's seriously disappointed. Just as seriously disappointed as I assume you would be if he made it to be President of the United States. That's right. Chris Christie is running to be President of the United States again. Hey, 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 vote for him and, I don't know, maybe he'll lose the entire country even more money. Great. There's one thing I know about Chris Christie, it's that man definitely doesn't share his gabagool. You know, just another interesting story coming out my home state. But one interesting thing I'd like to add, I'm fairly certain I actually took some of the standardized tests that were used to submit to Washington, D.C. for this, because I distinctly remember my senior year of high school, there were definitely bits in which I was told to take this standardized test that had nothing to do with any specific course I was taking. I was told to not worry about it. I wouldn't be graded on it, and it wouldn't affect my grade at all. And as soon as I'm finished, I can go home, and then I had to take it. Now, most kids that were around me would just kind of botch it, because if it didn't mean anything, they would just leave, whereas I just really liked taking tests and being competitive, so I tried my best. I hope I did my state proud, even though it didn't matter. There is a video of me taking an SAT up on my channel somewhere, by the way, if you haven't seen that yet. At the end of the day, I just find it wild that such a small little data error could cost the state so much money. But if you think about it, that's kind of what they were trying to teach us in school. Always check your work, guys. Will New Jersey be unbroken by Chris Christie and his stupid antics? I hope not, but it makes me wonder, when will politicians stop being dicks? Hey, that was not bad. That was the first take.